All right. Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me about your work using technology in the classroom with your students. Why don't you first introduce yourself and then we can sort of talk about your philosophy?
Sure. Well, thanks, Denise, for having me. My name is Jason Shaffer. I have been teaching now going into my 12th year in South Florida, and I was a history teacher for many years. And about 6 years ago, I was asked to launch an iPad pilot program, and that has sort of changed the direction of everything. And currently, I'm a technology teacher, and I'm involved in a lot of training for other teachers as well.
Oh, great. Okay. So we met, I think it was last year, at an event in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I think we have a bit of the same philosophy in that we really think that incorporating technology in the classroom is very important for students because I mean, I think you agree with me that the 21st century skills are necessary for students in order to be successful when they do go out into the world and pursue careers or even when they're at first looking at colleges. So why don't you talk a little bit about how you use technology in the classroom, I guess, after you first introduced the iPad?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest mistakes was thinking that students of this day and age are tech savvy, digital natives, they know everything. That seems to not be so much of the case.
Yeah.
Sure, they know how to turn things on, they know how to watch a YouTube video, but in terms of making ethical choices
Yeah.
and decision making and using this technology that is so powerful to communicate, that's really where I'm trying to take our students' understanding of the use of technology. Not that it just replaces textbooks, but that it really moves students to be able to connect with experts and to be able to create and produce and share their work across the world. And that's when I see students really doing some fantastic things.
Great. Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned not just replacing textbooks because I've heard that a lot from students where they say, well, digital literacy or my digital literacy class, all we're doing is reading our textbooks online.
Yeah, we did that at our school. We made a big shift to the one-to-one program in the middle school where every kid has an iPad, and then in the high school, a two-to-one program where they have an iPad and a computer. But even when you give them those tools, and even when the teachers have those tools, it's pretty common that the first thing everybody wants to try to do is just do what you've always done.
Yeah.
And, you know, instead of writing on paper, they're writing on a Google Doc.
Mhm.
Instead of, making a presentation in front of their class, they're making a PowerPoint.
Mhm.
And so not much changes. And I think that's where a lot of the teacher training comes in too, because you can give everybody the tools, but unless you sort of help them understand the power of this technology, it's not going to change much.
Yeah, yeah. And they do need to learn how to use these technologies in ways that is going to help them because eventually, when they're out, trying to apply to colleges or looking for internships, they need to understand how they can make these connections and how they need to present themselves, which I know is another thing you talk about a lot.
Yeah, so 6 years ago, after that iPad pilot, my technology director came to us and said, "Listen, Jason, we've got this outdated computer apps course that was trending in 1999. We're teaching Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, and projects are about dinosaurs and favorite foods. How can we take a technology class that's required for graduation, really update it, make it personal, and make it something relevant for the kids so that they are learning the skills that they're going to need, like you said, as
Mhm.
they're getting out into the workforce." And so in a few weeks, imagine that, we were able to come together and, with a lot of freedom that I was given,
Mhm.
create this course called Personal Branding and Digital Communication, and really teach the students to love themselves,
Mhm.
respect themselves, and you'd be shocked to know how much learning can happen once that's achieved.
Mhm.
And then, really, once you discover what it is that you love about yourself and what you're passionate about, let's use that technology like social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, to get the message out so that if anybody ever were to Google your name or find you online, they would know the things you want them to know, and you'd be proud of it too, which
Yeah.
is something that is very important, especially in the college application season.
Yeah. That's really powerful. What you said first is that you need to first teach the students how to love and respect themselves and find what it is they're really interested in. Because I see a lot when I see these negative reports online about, for example, the most recent, the girl who was just, yeah, the girl who was just convicted of encouraging her boyfriend to commit suicide, and she was using text, or these students who had been accepted to Harvard and had their acceptance rescinded because of what they were doing on the Facebook page. And a lot of times, like, you see the headline is about the technology. It's about Facebook. It's about, let's get Trump to get off Twitter, that kind of thing. And what I keep trying to go back to is the problem is not the technology,
No,
right? So Twitter is a very powerful tool, but it's what he's saying that's the problem and how he's using it. And the same with this, this girl who was texting her boyfriend. Texting is not the problem. The technology is not the problem. And same with the students at Harvard with Facebook. They were really sharing some, their problem was not Facebook. The problem was the character of these students.
absolutely. So when the course I created first was launched, I focused a lot of time, like most people are doing right now, on what not to do.
Yeah.
And then I had a change, and that was happened when I attended Project Zero at Harvard's graduate school. I got to spend a week there, and the first course that I took was on digital ethics. And the professor was brilliant and really spent time helping me understand that it doesn't matter if you're online or offline. The character that you are, the person that you are, the ethics that you have needs to be consistent wherever you go. And when I heard that message, I think it's something I already knew, but when I heard it articulated from her, I went back to my class that next spring and really changed the focus of my class. And if you were to walk in there today, I don't mention once what they shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Because we spend so much time at the very beginning in those first few weeks just really crafting what matters to us, what we love and what we care about and what we love about ourselves, that to do something like these examples you gave would be out of character, and it says it all. And the dynamic of the course really has changed a lot, because I'm no longer that father figure talking down to these students, but instead I'm someone who's embracing the power and really giving them the tools that they already love. Maybe they just don't know how to use it in a professional sense.
Yeah. That's I think that's 100% the way to go. And you're definitely leading the way in this in this area, because I see a lot in the schools around here where they have the policemen coming in and talking about technology. And that is important too. Obviously, we don't want kids to be using technology to commit crimes, or we certainly don't want students sexting, and we want to kind of teach them and have them understand what those dangers are. But I think they're missing 99% of the message, which should be the exact opposite, which is what you were saying, is how can I use these extremely powerful technologies for my advancement and toward my advantage.
Yeah, and the tricky part is that the technology keeps changing.
Yeah.
So I think I'll have a job for a really long time, because there's always these new tips and tricks, and again, once you get past the ethical decision-making part, all the rest, and how to craft that online brand, whether it's, again, today, Twitter is the way that I'm sharing with my students, but in the future, who knows? And just the skills that it takes to make a YouTube video, or to create a blog, or to just write the perfect bio. These are skills that these kids are going to need to know. And when they sit down for a job interview or a college application interview, the ability that they're going to have to articulate themselves, I don't think there's another class like it. And so sometimes it feels like a psychology class, a leadership class, a business class, a creative writing class. I'm blessed. I have a really great job.
Yeah, no, and you're definitely like on the leading edge of it all, I think. How old are your students? Is this high school?
So it's a requirement for high school students to
Mhm.
take. Most of them, I'd say, 80% are ninth graders,
Mhm.
but we have to get them in before they graduate. So I always have those lags
Mhm.
who take it a little bit later, maybe even a senior year, which truthfully is a little too late.
Mhm.
If we can get it in the ninth grade, we're hoping that we can really set themselves up for success. And again, because it's not just the personal branding, it's also the digital communication. The hope is that they'll take what they learn in my class and they'll apply it to their history class. So, when it comes time to doing a research paper, maybe they don't just go to Google and type in random keywords, but they actually head to LinkedIn or Twitter and try to connect with a historian or
Mhm.
historical experts who might be able to help make their papers better. So it just depends on how far you want to take it, but it really sky's the limit.
Yeah. Um, I think I want to take your class actually.
I have a lot of parents say that. So, one of the projects I've been working on, Denise, is teacher training.
Mhm.
And we're just finished up our third season of it. And this year, for the first time, we did open it up to parents
Mhm.
because it's not just personal branding, it's Google Apps and it's Twitter and all sorts of things that we're doing with the students. And we thought, what better way to help the parents have our back, but to open up our walls and to let them come in and see what we do. So we had one.
Yeah.
We had one parent who came this summer, which is a great start. She's the head of the PSTA, and
Mhm.
hopefully she'll spread the message a little bit more. But it's not just about teachers and students, and I think
Yeah.
that's what's the most powerful is this message is for all of us. When I teach the kids about Twitter,
Mhm.
and we look at the word followers,
Mhm.
we don't see that word. We see people I'm teaching,
Yeah.
and when we see following, it's people I want to learn from, and
Mhm.
tweets are things I've taught. So absolutely, I'm right in line with you, and we had it easy. We grew up. I mean, I grew up in New York. I think
Mhm.
so did you.
Mhm.
And we made our mistakes. They just didn't happen on a computer. So by the time I got access to the internet in like 1995 or something like
Yeah.
that, I already knew who I was
Mhm.
and the message I wanted to let people know who I was. Our students are getting, I mean, I have a 3-week-old daughter downstairs
Mhm.
who's going to have an iPad probably by the time she's 2.5.
Yeah.
She's not going to know who she is. And
Mhm.
when she's watching a video and stamping that digital footprint all
Mhm.
over the place, she's not going to understand how that could come back at some point. And it's again, it goes back to that whole idea of we can't assume that because they're born in this generation that they know how to use these tools. They only know what they've been told, and their lessons are coming from their friends, their older brothers, who may not have that decision making process all in line yet with their ethics and moral decision making.
Yes. And then on the flip side of that, I wonder sometimes if, you know, we do we want our kids to really be thinking about resume building when they're 12 and 13 and 2.5? And should there be an allowance to make mistakes? So, a college admissions officer, how far do they really need to go back, number one? And when do you say, okay, this is a student who made a silly mistake online and we were able to find it, but now we've seen X, Y, and Z proving that they learned from their mistake?
Yeah, I mean, there's a great TED Talk by a guy named Juan Enriquez. If you have not seen this, you've got to check it out. And he talks about learning from the Greeks and this idea that we better be careful how far back we go into someone's past, whether it's our loved ones or if it's a student, because, people do have the right to live and to change and to grow. Lucky for me, I did that before I had the internet.
Mhm.
But again, yeah, I think it's a slippery slope when you go too far back. But I will also tell you that this social platforms that we're using, whichever one it is almost becoming like a living obituary. And I know that when I was growing up, I would have begged for the chance to see what my parents were like in high school. And I could never do that because they would only tell me what they wanted me to know. But today, my daughter's going to be able to Google my name and search me on Twitter and Facebook, and she's going to find out. So whether or not it's right or wrong, that tool is there, and we should prepare for it the best we can, I think.
Right. It's the acceptance of this is your new reality. So, um, not that it's not okay to make mistakes, because everybody's going to make mistakes, and you hope obviously that you learn from those mistakes. But it is that, yeah, you're leaving this trail behind you everywhere that you go, and so you have to be mindful of how you want to present yourself.
Yeah, it's funny. I ask my students one question. I say, if you would had the choice of being grounded for a week or losing your cell phone, which would you choose? I'd say 75% of them say, ground me for the week. Do not take my cell phone. And that's just evidence to the fact that that's where their lives are. And so when they are doing well, we need to help them promote it. And when they're doing bad, we've got to understand that you're going to see evidence of that on their social platforms. And there's a word that's going around now that really thinks it helps the students think that they're safe, and they're not, and it's this Finstagram. I
Hmm.
don't know if you're familiar with
Yes.
that word.
Yeah.
My students are convinced that a Finstagram account is safe. Only 6 people follow me, and everything I do there is protected. And I really, really try my best to help them understand that that's a false sense of security. And you have to be yourself, whether it's a private account, it's a public account, you're at the mall, you're at the beach. You've always just got to be true to yourself. And if you can live with whatever it is, right, you don't have to be an angel. You've just got to be able to understand that who you are is who you are and be proud of it, embrace it. Because listen, there are plenty of people out there whose brands are not perfect angels, and they're doing just fine.
Hmm.
Um, when it's a 12-year-old that we're talking about, or a 13-year-old we're talking about, I think that's where we really need mom and dad to step in and say to them, listen, this is not how I raised you. This is not what I taught you. And again, it doesn't matter if it comes from mom and dad, grandpa, church, synagogue, school, but we've got to just continue to put this positive message in front of our students, our children. And at some point, we're going to grow up and we're going to learn the right way to behave and the right way to do things so that we're not hurting other people, and certainly we're not hurting ourselves. So again, go back to what we said at the beginning. It has nothing to do with technology. It just happens that technology is the means that people are using right now.
Right. It's about a quality of character,
Yeah.
and yeah, and right, and learning to be kind and learning to be respectful of yourself and of others.
And that's when you see classrooms really moving to the next level. When you have a classroom that's built on this idea of helping other people, right? And then you're using technology and social media, you're going to have your students creating projects that are really beginning to change the world. And then personal branding is easy because they're doing these wonderful things in the public forum, in the public space. And so whether they are, my middle school kids who are creating robots for their first Lego League
Hmm.
tournaments, or if it's a student in the high school who's designing a solar car, these are things that you should be proud of, and these are things that you should really embrace. And okay, so if that's your passion, now let's share that out. Let's put that on Twitter. Let's make sure that that's on your LinkedIn page so that when someone finds it, uh, these are the things that they're finding about you. And I think the rule is, for every one bad thing out there, you need to find 7 good things
Yeah.
to cover it up. So,
Yeah.
however it works for you.
Exactly. I do say that too. It's like, if you did make a mistake online, or you did do something that maybe you're not so proud of, you can try and go back and erase it or remove it, and you may be able to. For the most part, probably you have to expect that it can be found and saved and shared. But then just then flood your new persona with more positives.
Yeah, and listen, it's not perfect. It's not easy. One of the tools that I use with my kids is to create an About Me page.
Hmm.
So when they use that About Me page, it allows them to sort of focus the attention on certain social networks that they want people to go to.
Hmm.
And the thought is that if I give you access to my blog, my YouTube channel, my Twitter, my Google Plus, maybe that's enough for you, and you won't keep looking for my Instagram that might be on private,
Hmm.
and stop you from guessing why it might be on private. And I don't know, nothing's perfect, nothing's foolproof. My students are embracing the education, but let's be honest, they don't walk out of my class and they're perfect angels the next day, and the end of the bikini in the bathroom pictures,
Yeah.
or the end of the middle finger with a white t-shirt on. It's still going to happen. They're still kids. But again, I can go home assured that someone told them that there is a better way. And ultimately, it's on them, it's on their parents, it's on the community that we live in to really embrace this idea of a positive image and positive footprint, online or off.
Yeah, that's a powerful message for them. I wonder too, though, if okay, so if you create the About Me page and you say, "Here's my LinkedIn, here's my here's my Twitter, maybe here's my blog," but my Instagram is private, my Snapchat is only for close friends or whatever. I feel like that's okay because everybody has a professional side of themselves and then a personal side of themselves. And it wouldn't be necessarily that, for example, I would have something to hide. But for me, my Facebook is really more about me connecting with my family for the most part, who are, not close, or my friends who don't live near me. That's kind of what Facebook is for me. So I don't like to share my Facebook as much with professional colleagues. Not that I'm hiding anything, but just
Right, so there's two things about that. Number one, I read an article a while back. I could not tell you where it came from, and it sort of had these social media networks in these different rooms in your house.
yeah,
Twitter is your dining room, Facebook is your living room, Instagram is like your basement where anything goes, like that kind of thing. So definitely, right, parsing out your message on different sites, and I do the same thing. On my Twitter, I am an educator who loves technology. But if you go to my Instagram, I'm a toy collector who loves comic books.
yeah,
So, right, it's that message that we go out. Now, again, neither one is negative. I have nothing to hide on either one of them, and I always know that. But I will say that there is this bias against these private accounts. And I think it just goes to the fact that when we don't know, sometimes we just sort of imagine the worst. And so that's something that I tell my students as well. And the way we do that is with a simulation the first week of class where they pretend to be the college admissions officers. And I tell them we have two great students. Here's their social media feeds. What do you like? What do you don't like? Let's pick one at the end. So they pick one. And then when they're done, I say, oh, I forgot there's two more kids. But the reason I forgot about them was because one's on private and one I couldn't even find at all. Does anybody want to change their vote?
yeah,
And they never do. They, in their hearts, would rather pick the student that is not perfect, but they can get access to, than the student who's on private because they just assume they're hiding something. And I don't know if it's because they're doing that, and so that's in their brain. But even if you've got 5 social networks, 4 of them are public and one's private, you're still going to have that one person who thinks you're up to no good just because that account's on private, even if it's not. So the truth is that as long as there's nothing that is painting you in a bad light, then it doesn't really matter if it's private or public. Because privacy settings in general are like building a wall around your country. It's a false sense of security. Like living in a neighborhood with a guard gate where there's 35 break-ins a year, and you're like, how did that happen? I live in a guard gate. It's because you just thought you were safe.
So what would be your advice to educators who are interested in maybe following your path?
Can I plug myself for a
Yes,
second?
of course.
So the first thing I would do is I would go to www.itech21.org and I would sign up for next summer's teacher training. Thank you for letting me do that. Okay, but now seriously what I would do is I'd make sure I get on Twitter. Okay, when I started becoming a technology teacher, my degree was in history. Didn't even have a Twitter account, and I barely used Facebook. But I turned to Twitter to learn and to educate myself in all things personal branding. So whether that was business or leadership or ed tech or social media, my entire education came from what I learned from following experts like you on Twitter. And so if I was going to start from scratch to create a new class or just to learn more about educational technology, I would create a Twitter account. I would look for people who are already in the know. There are some fantastic educators, and by rule, If you're on Twitter, it's because you want to share. And so reach out to some of these people who are in these chats. There are tons of ed tech chats online. And like I said, there are tons of experts. I think the next thing I would do is I would leave room in my schedule to play with this technology. And I certainly would not be afraid to fail, because you're going to fail. And you're going to look silly in front of your students who are like, oh my God, I can't believe you didn't know how to open that app.
Yeah.
Let them show you. Give them some power. And maybe I would even enlist them to help choose the apps that we're going to use in class. So again, they are feeling empowered. They are going to embrace it, take ownership in the learning. And so when it comes to what should I use technology for in the classroom, it's, again, like what I said earlier, it's not to replace what you're already doing. Mm-hmm. It's to really elevate the game. Check out the SAMR model, SAMR. Take a look at sort of how you can use that. And it's, no different than just changing what you're doing in a way that is going to help your students become the creators instead of just the consumers. Because that's what they're doing now. They're consuming all this information with technology. They're loving video games, but they don't know how to make them. They are learning how to play with toys, but they've never been in a 3D lab and actually made their own on a 3D printer. So those are the things I would do. Get on Twitter, find the experts, play with the technology in the classroom in front of the kids. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and then find the stuff that's going to help them become the creators themselves.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way to end this conversation. Jason, I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise. And so how can people find you online?
So, of course, I'm on Twitter at Shaffer, SHAFFER _Jason. And I am all over the place. You can always find me. Reach out. I'm literally on Twitter 24/7, waiting for your fans and your friends to find me and learn together. And again, it's not so that I can teach you, it's so that we can learn together as a community. And I would love the opportunity to do that with anyone who's interested.
Wonderful. And your About Me page, how do they find your About Me page?
It's about.me/Jason.Shaf, SHAF.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. And, I'd like to take your class. I hope I can get down there at some point and do it. I'd love to. As a parent and as as someone who is really passionate about this topic.
Well, if you're ever in South Florida, I'd love to bring you to our school. You can see what the magic is happening, and certainly sit down and we can continue this conversation then. That would be fabulous.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.